Who defines rights? The question is a critical one. There are 13 ways, and I talk about them in this book, that central staters, people who want to collect power in one place, take control of your life further and further away from you and bring it to them and their minions in a central location. There are 13 doorways they use to centralize power. And the book talks about each one of them, and sometimes they are not intuitively obvious. For example, on the question of rights, people think, you know what, the more rights we have, the better. And this simply isn't true, especially when the group that defines what your rights are and redefines what your rights are is far away from you in a central location, and they're basically employees of the central government. And so this is ironic, it's counterintuitive, but it's true that one of the 13 things that must be decentralized to keep power from being accumulated all to one capital city is that the ability to define rights has to be decentralized. If you have, like we have now, we have one Supreme Court, and we need a Supreme Court, and in many cases I'm glad we have a Supreme Court and a federal court system. However, they've recently taken a very expansive view of rights. I think I cover in the book, the original Slaughterhouse case was the first test of the court saying, all right, we've got this new 14th Amendment where if Congress passes a law, we can apply some restrictions to the states. And they were so restrained in that Slaughterhouse case. They should have intervened there, and they said, no, we don't want to be too pushy. It's a far cry from today. Today, they don't even wait for Congress to pass a law. They just say, we're going to assume that we can order the states to do X and Y, and that it's our business to do that. And there are some things they need to. There are some things they need to do that. If agents of the state are taking people's property, not letting them leave, for example, if they are engaging in collusion with private citizens to say stop people from leaving, stop people from voting, stop people from being represented in the legislature, yes, definitely the federal government needs to get involved. There's the one thing I've learned the hard way: you cannot trust any legislator on, any state legislature on, is to fairly make the rules under which people compete with them for their jobs. For instance, if you want a new party and then you have ballot access laws in your state and you start having success, they're likely just to change the laws to make it harder, because it's just human nature. It's like they don't want to face the competition. They have enough competition just from the other major party. They don't want new party. They don't want independence. And so the temptation will be, we write the laws, we'll just make it harder to compete for our jobs. And so you need a federal government in areas like that. But it should be very limited beyond that, because the risk you run, what is the definition of tyranny? One of our founders had a great definition of tyranny. He said the very definition of tyranny is when all power is gathered together in the same set of hands. And that's exactly what you have with the Supreme Court in its current form, where it doesn't have the restraint that it had in the past. Now they take it upon themselves to redefine marriage for everybody. They take it upon themselves to say no state can make abortion legal, and now they say any state can make abortion legal. I mean, they took it on themselves at one point to say, and of course this was a long time ago, that black people were not property, and now recently they've said corporations are people. So they said black people are property and not people, and corporations are not property, they're people. So the rulings they're making are hard to defend intellectually. They're hard to defend morally in some cases. And so we need relief from that. And some people think the relief should be, well, we just need to get our president elected and our Congress elected so we can stack the court with guys and gals who will see things our way. That's not an answer, folks. The problem isn't that we've got the wrong 9 people on the Supreme Court. The problem is that those 9 people have way too much power. It's going to be centralized. And any time you have power centralized in a very distant location, you are inviting corruption. And the stakes are so high. It's very tempting for people who want to grab onto power to cheat and do every dirty trick in the book to get control of those 9 seats, to get people who, to flatter them, isolate them, work on their psyche over time, find a way to bribe them, maybe not directly, but nice to their kids and what have you. So you have to decentralize power. Lord Acton was correct. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the courts have gotten to where they are almost that absolute power. They can overturn the acts of any legislature. It doesn't matter what the legislature says. It doesn't matter what the state executive says. The courts make a ruling. The pressure of the other 2 branches, they just sort of bow down. And I'm glad they do in most cases, because our legislatures have done some pretty foolish things too. Our executives have done some pretty foolish things. I'm grateful for the check and balance of the court. At the same time, it's just too much power. We need the court power distributed, not all left in one place for all decisions. So it was a flaw. It was in our Constitution. It was kind of a flaw. There are things you can do about it without changing the Constitution. I think the Congress can exclude things from consideration of the courts, and maybe one way is to do that a lot more. But what I'm saying is the power to define rights is an absolute power. Because once you say something is a right, elections no longer matter. The will of the people no longer matter. If you try to divide things up with localism into different jurisdictions, those jurisdictional lines no longer matter. Nothing matters except the courts have decided something's a right. Now, when the court showed restraint, that was one thing. They would only have rights that limited government action. They say the citizens have rights against the state. Okay, that limited government action. I think that's a good thing. But they've changed that. Now they have positive rights, which is to say, and this is, I think, the state judges in my state were an example. They said, all right, legislature, people have a right to education, and we've determined that means there should be a certain funding level for education, and we decided the level you provided is inadequate, so we're ordering you to increase spending for public education. And of course, the only way they could do that was to raise taxes. They had to get the money from somewhere, and they did. So the courts essentially ordered a tax increase. The people were not voting for a tax increase. The courts just imposed their will. And that's wrong, and there should be checks and balances on that. And in our case, we have elected judges, so we do have some chance to get around it. But let's say you didn't. There's judicial power if you start assuming rights can be positive like that. They have a right to health care. They have a right to affordable housing. They have a right to all this. Well, guess what, folks? If I have to get taxed for you to pay for you to exercise it, it is not your right. That's not a right. You have a right to health care, whatever health care you can get, but do you have a right to enslave me and I go out and work so that you have health care? That's a totally different question. See, because it amounts to slavery. If you start saying the doctors have to work for this much wage and no more, or the citizens have to provide everybody this much health care, it becomes a situation where courts are ordering you to go to work and give money into a system against your will. And so those are positive rights. And I'm not positive that positive rights are valid. The old idea of rights were restrictions on the government. The new idea of rights are increasingly restrictions on people, on the citizens. Another example is using the language of rights to divide citizens into favored and disfavored groups. This group is favored, that group is not. We rule that this group has to do something for that group. And yes, it divides us. It turns us all into people who are trying to petition the court to basically be a super legislator that can vote money into our pockets at the expense of someone else. And because the court is no longer has a fixed standard for law, they're assuming more power for themselves generation of generation. These groups are encouraged to keep relitigating things. You know, gee, 15 years ago we lost this case, but we have three new Supreme Court justices since then. Let's try it again. We'll change the facts just a little bit. We'll change our language just a little bit, but let's try it again, because maybe these new guys, they'll feel differently. And so it is a giant mess, and it's going to be a giant mess. Human government is messy, and you're not going to get perfection. I'm not advocating a localist solution, dividing the power of the courts, limiting the power of the courts, leaving more things to the states. Are they going to make mistakes? Yes, they will. But if they make enough mistakes, it's a much easier to fix when a state court makes a mistake than when a federal court makes a mistake. You can't fix it when the federal court makes a mistake, because then they say, oh, well, gee, it's settled law. What does that mean? That means even if we made a mistake, that's our story and we're sticking with it. It's a terrible way to run a country, but and like I said, they change it anyway. They pull out the settled law card when they don't want to admit they made a bad ruling the last time, but then they ignore the settled law card when they decide they need to make a novel new ruling. So it's too much power to have in the hands of 9 people. They are too far removed, both culturally and physically, from the people that they're making pronouncements for. And it's one of the things that need to be decentralized. And localism, I talk about some things we could do on several levels to sort of restore the balance between the judiciary and the other branches. Now, if you don't reform the other branches in the way that I'm suggesting with localism, that's a bad idea, because right now those other 2 branches are in bad shape too, and the will of the people cannot express itself and correct the mechanism because of how the party system has a lock on things and various other factors that are related to the other doorways. The whole idea of localism is there's these 13 doorways that we have to shut, otherwise power is going to be centralized. And the total lock that the 2-party system has on the political process is one of those things. But I'm going to start with the first one in the book, and that is who defines rights. And what I'm saying is you should have more than one body that has authority to define rights within various geographical regions. Does that mean you get slightly different answers? Yes, it does. And that's okay. We need to be mentally healthy enough to sleep well at night, even though a stranger we've never met, who's living in a city we've never been to, is of his own or free will staying in a place where they do things differently than we would approve of. I think we need to be helped. In order to survive in a big nation, in a diverse nation, with people who have different attitudes about things and different values and beliefs, we need to be at least that mentally healthy. So it is non-intuitive, counterintuitive even, that you actually get a better set of rights when you limit the power of the central government to define rights, and you spread that power out into the states, and let people have slightly different answers about what our rights are, and then see what works. Return America to that melting pot, or not even that melting pot, but that series of experiments. You've got 50 state experiments, each one of them trying to find a better way to govern than the others. And the ones that work, hey, maybe we should listen to them. Or you could say, you know what, we don't want to listen to them because they have different values than we do, they have different ideas than we do, and that won't work for us. But that's okay. We'll do what works for us, you do what works for you, and we'll still stay in the same country together without fighting one another, without going after each other to try to control the Supreme Court, to force novel ideas about rights that override the legislative process and override the governing process, and basically give us an almost toxic situation. Thank you for listening, folks. I know it's tough on the old brain thinking of these counterintuitive ideas like we need the decentralized who makes rights. But it's true. It's true. And there's a lot of things like that in the book. Anyway, thank you for listening.